To say, of course, across the UK and going to be seen by 400 million people on TV worldwide is the FA Cup final between Manchester City and Wigan. And coming up in this show a bit later on, we're going to be talking to a former coach of Aylesbury United, the junior side. That's Steve Greenhalf, because in 1991, a young lad from Quarrendon School in Aylesbury turned up to play football. He was called Emmerson Boyce. He was then scouted by Luton Town and they signed him. He became a professional and played in the first team for Luton, went on to Crystal Palace before joining Wigan for £1 million in 2006. So we're going to talk to Steve Greenhalf about the young Emmerson Boyce, and also to the former youth coach at Luton Town who took him on, John Moore. And I'm holding in my hand an amazing kind of book here, the under-11s year 1990 to 1991 of Aylesbury United that Steve Greenhalf has brought in. And it's got the kind of names of the team and who they are, along with Emmerson Boyce, players by their first names, Russell, Nicky, Peter, Liam and so on. They all paid £7 deposit in their annual subs, and then they were going to have to pay £35 via cheque. And it gives some tactics and awareness and gives some details of the half-time talks, and it also gives all the scorelines as well. And in the final page, Emmerson Boyce in the different matches scored this number of goals: 3, 4, 1, 6, 1, 1, 2, 1, 3, and so on. Because he scored loads of goals in that 1990-91 season. It was his first season there, and he played up front as a striker at that time. He got 14 hat-tricks. So this is an amazing document, and we'll be hearing all about that history of Emmerson Boyce and the Aylesbury United under-11 side of 1990-91 later on in this show. Don't miss that, because Steve Greenhalf will be reminiscing. But let's get back to looking in this amazing book of the Aylesbury United under-11 side and their performance in the 1990-1991 season, because it features one Emmerson Boyce, who started his career there as a schoolboy. Then he moved on to Luton Town as an apprentice at the age of 16, joined Crystal Palace on a free transfer in 2004, and then joined Wigan in the Premier League in 2006 for, amazingly, a sum of £1 million. And Steve Greenhalf joins us now. Steve lives in Leighton Buzzard, but back in 1990 he was the youth coach, if you like, at Aylesbury United. He gave them 30 years of service to that club, so he doesn't coach anymore. So Steve, welcome to the Saturday afternoon show. Can you remember when Emmerson Boyce, who plays for Wigan in the FA Cup final this afternoon, when he first turned up?
Yeah, he turned up when he was about 10 years old. I'd just done a season with Aylesbury United Juniors under 10s, and in all honesty, he wasn't really successful that season. So we got the boys to bring along some friends, and one of the boys brought along Emmerson. We just gave him a bib, as is the usual way, and told him to go out and do his best. And then we just sort of watched in utter astonishment as he scored goal after goal. So,
really?
Yeah.
At the age of 11, 12?
Just 11 then, yeah.
And he wasn't particularly big for his age or anything like that?
He was very tall for his age, yes.
And that helped, I imagine.
Scared a few defenders, yes.
But natural ability, you'd say, going forward, beating men?
Going forward, yes. Very fast. He was a natural runner anyway. So,
and did you just sort of encourage him to play his natural game? He didn't really have to do much coaching.
No, there wasn't really much coaching involved. He had all the skill involved in scoring goals, and that was what we actually wanted at that time. Things changed later on, obviously, but
he got over 70 goals in 30 games or something one year.
73 goals in his first season with us, in 30 games. I think he included about 14 hat-tricks.
14 hat-tricks.
Yeah.
And so you got promotion, did you, and moved up?
We were in Division 1 anyway, so that's good to score that many goals in Division 1.
That is extraordinary.
Yeah.
And then I suppose it got harder as he got a bit older, because the other players were growing too.
The other boys grew up, and they weren't quite so scared, but that's possibly one of the reasons why we switched him to defence.
Well, how did that happen? Because that's where he'll be playing this afternoon.
Certainly. Well, no, he was playing up front, obviously, and then because of injuries and whatnot, we switched him over to defence for one game, and then we switched him to defence for tactical reasons for another game, and then it sort of became obvious that he sort of fitted that role. Despite the fact he could score goals, luckily there were other boys that could do that.
So he didn't rebel against that too
He
much?
did. He hated it. Absolutely loathed it, and and didn't like me very much for quite a while, but he's forgiven me now.
And what was he like as a lad? Pleasant young boy?
Very pleasant young lad, yeah, very quiet.
His parents were trying to get him to concentrate more on schoolwork than sport, weren't they, I heard?
Very keen on his schoolwork, yes. And I think it was the fact that when he became a YTS that there was college work involved with it, that they were, they supported him then. The only game that he actually missed for us in the 4 years he played was because he was grounded for not doing homework.
His mum and dad also, I think, or his dad had good natural cricketing skills.
Yes, Melvin is a good cricketer, or was a good cricketer.
So Emmerson was good at that too, wasn't he?
Emmerson was good. He was very keen on cricket, very keen on athletics, and could have done running, I believe, as well. He still holds records at Aylesbury Vale Academy, quarantined at that time, for athletics and running.
Did he ever say that he might want to consider professional football as a career?
I don't think that came up at the time, no. I took him along to Luton Town School of Excellence when he was 12 to give him the opportunity, and they asked him back. We had a loose connection as we United Juniors with Luton Town. Marvin Johnson had come from our club as well. So they were quite keen on us bringing boys down. So I brought Emmerson down. He had trials. They asked him back. So for 2 years, I took him up to Stantonbury and Milton Keynes, and then Vauxhall, and went on from there.
So he was combining playing for them and.
Yes, in those days you could play for School of Excellence and for your Sunday club as well. So that worked out well for both of us. Obviously, there comes a time when you've got to decide whether you're going to go on.
And when was that time for Emmerson Boyce?
Emerson signed schoolboy forms when he was 14.
You lost him straight away?
They let him play for another year, and then we lost him, which had a big effect on the club.
But that was sort of John Moore was part of the youth setup?
John Moore was, Emmerson really has a lot of time for John Moore. I think John was one of the first on Emerson's wedding guest list. He values a lot of everything he says,
But you too were full of encouragement, I'm sure, and you've stayed in contact with him all that.
Yeah, it's good. Yes, we still see him. We
Best
still go
part
up
of 20 years since you first met him.
Yeah, must be. Yes, we still go up to Wigan.
And he settled in at Luton Town more or less straight away, didn't he?
Yeah, he did.
It was an amazing youth setup there with the players they had up
at that time. Yes, Matt Upson, Gary Doherty. I knew Gary Doherty because he was in the Chiltern Youth League rep side at the same time as Emmerson. They went to Denmark together on a tournament. Yeah, I think Gary moved over to Spurs. Matt Upson moved over to Arsenal. I think possibly both of them a little bit too early. Whereas Emmerson just learnt his trade at Luton. As I said, he got on very well with John Moore at the time, and became sort of a fan's favourite, which he's done at Palace and Wigan since as well.
We're charting the Emmerson Boyce story, the man that will captain Wigan against Manchester City in the FA Cup final at 5:15 at Wembley this afternoon. That's Steve Greenhalf, who had Emmerson under his wing as a schoolboy player at Aylesbury United. And Steve mentioned John Moore. He was the youth coach at the time of Luton Town, and we can say good afternoon to John Moore.
Good afternoon.
Well, this is a really big day for one of your sort of star prodigies, really, I guess, isn't it?
Yes, it's absolutely tremendous. I was only thinking about it this morning myself, really, and thinking, have I ever had somebody else who's come through the ranks with me who's playing at Wembley in the cup final? I don't know if Matthew Upson ever made it with Arsenal, but he's probably the only other one who springs to mind.
Well, we've been hearing from Steve Greenhalf, the coach of Aylesbury United back in the early 1990s, and he brought Emmerson Boyce to you at the academy when Emmerson was still at school. Do you remember that?
Well, we weren't such a thing as an academy in them days, but Emmerson Boyce, ever since I've known him, as far as I'm concerned, he's a lovely, quiet, unassuming lad. And I'm really, really pleased that he's managed to go so far in a hard, ruthless game at times. Because of his nature, he's not that forceful. But he's absolutely, obviously got some determination and grit underneath that he doesn't always show.
Well, you had a great youth team when he arrived, I think, with, as you mentioned, Matthew Upson, Gary Doherty, Liam George was there, wasn't he?
Yeah, people like that, yes.
So he had this natural ability, according to Steve, and he'd sort of converted him to a defender. That was how you always saw him being yourself too, was it?
Yes, I think that, you know, it's like anything else. I'm not being rude, like, but it's easier to play at the back. And, you know, you're facing the ball virtually all the time. Although I see him play now, and he's playing wing back, and he's getting forward, and he's getting in very advanced positions. And that's very good, and I'm really pleased about that, because one of the things I always try to teach them is that no matter where you find yourself on the field, the ball's the same and the grass is still the same. Your control should still be the same, and that's something that some people don't grasp, because if they're in their own position, they feel happy, but when they get to an advanced position, that fear comes into them.
It must be very proud for you, because, as you say, in a ruthless business, in a sense, he was a quiet lad, but well grounded with his parents and with yourselves. And in a sense, you've meant that he's got no side on him, and he's kept that side to his character, and yet he's still got through it.
Yes, it's absolutely amazing. I think you've hit it right, the nail on the head there. The grounding he's got from his parents, which is vital, I think, to any young boy who's trying to make the way. You know, because the values that they give him, if he carries that forward, then that can help him. And I think that is vital, you know, whereas I would try and instill discipline in them, I never had any problem with discipline with Emmerson Boyce. You know what I mean? Whereas some of them, you've got to pull them up, and you've got to say, look, son, we don't do that. And
he was pretty popular with the rest of his teammates, and always has been, hasn't he?
Yes, he's such a lovely lad. He's honestly, it's unbelievable. He's just such a nice person.
You went to his wedding, didn't you?
Yes, I did. I did get invited. I was surprised, and to be honest, like, it's incredible, really, because he's the only person who's ever invited me to something like that.
Have you been able to message him in the run-up?
No, I don't keep in touch, because I think they've got their own lives to lead, and I'm just pleased. I'm just, you know, I'm over the moon, you might say, and that's a silly statement, I think. But I'm just so pleased that they can achieve something. That's what I always wanted. I just wanted that person to be able to achieve something that maybe they didn't think was possible when they walked in the door.
Do you think that he can hold the FA Cup aloft today and get a winner's medal?
Well, look, I've got to be honest with you about that, and I think the odds are against him. But I would really, really, really love it if he could do it, because I'm just thinking earlier today again, I was thinking, well, Swansea have done it, and that's fantastic. Can Wigan now do it? And that would be absolutely fantastic for, you know, two small clubs like that to grasp two trophies in England when everybody's talking about the money, the money, the money.
Well said, John. I think a lot of people would certainly back up what you say there. We'll know around about 7 o'clock, of course, this evening, because it's Wigan against Manchester City in the FA Cup final at Wembley at 5:15. John Moore, former youth coach at Luton Town. Fantastic to hear you on the radio again, and thank you so much.
Thanks very much for calling me, and I just wish him all the luck in the world and hope it's successful. Thank you.
Across beds, hearts and bucks, this is Mike Naylor on BBC Three Counties Radio.
Fantastic to hear John Moore again, and before that, Steve Greenhalf, and we'll be hearing more from Steve in a moment. Let's drop in at Welford Road, because remember, thinking that Leicester were going to win that, because they very rarely lose in what is sounding like a cauldron atmosphere there. So we'll hear more from Russell Hargreaves a bit later on. Remember then, tomorrow, Alliance Park in North London is where Sarries take on Northampton Saints, and you'll be able to hear that at 3 o'clock on BBC Three Counties Radio, and before that at 12:30, coverage of Watford and commentary of their game in the Championship playoff semi-final against Leicester. On air with Jeff Doyle and the team from 12 noon. If the Watford match was to go to... So it's 5:15 the time today for Wigan against Man City. Let's get back to Steve Greenhalf, who was coaching Emmerson Boyce back in the 90s at Aylesbury United. And Emmerson joined Wigan in 2006 for £1 million, I think.
2006, yes. He's their longest playing.
How does that make you feel as a former youth team coach at Aylesbury United when he was 10, 11?
What, taking his 20p subs a week?
Yeah, that's what it was, yeah.
No, I'm just thrilled for him. Yeah.
But you followed his career in the 7 years he's been at Wigan as well, is it?
Yeah. And Godson Kieran's become very much a Wigan fan as well, so and we go up there and to away games as well.
Yeah.
And see his family. His family are often up there.
I mean, he's a great ambassador for their club and for...
He is, yes.
For football.
And he's never lost touch with his roots either. His friends are always up there and always in touch. From Aylesbury, yes. And Bucks, yes.
Let's talk about Wigan in the day-to-day, because, you know, it's going to be unfortunate if they lose this and then presumably go in as the underdogs against Arsenal on Tuesday and very much are now in danger of dropping out of the Premier League. It's
going to be difficult for them, particularly playing in Europe next season, if they do drop down, because players are likely to go. It's not the usual way. So we desperately need them to win against Villa at least.
But on their day,
take a point off
they're
Arsenal.
A great side.
On their day, we can beat Arsenal last season. Indeed. So you know.
And they only lost narrowly at Manchester City in the league a few weeks ago, and they'd had some good chances. Yeah. It was just a sort of brilliance near the end.
Yeah,
from
but
Tevez.
that has been the story of their season to a great extent, losing it in the last quarter of the game.
Is this a mental thing then?
Yeah, it seems to be. But they've struggled with defence a lot, with injuries in defence a lot this season.
But do you worry if Manchester City take an early lead today that you know, it could be an avalanche and be a heavy defeat?
That's always a worry. But
and
fingers crossed.
How would that affect them mentally then, with the 2 league games left?
It's obviously going to be playing on their minds. But I think they'll just go for it. You know, the magic of the FA Cup can produce anything. We've seen it before, Wimbledon, Liverpool. You always remember those sort of games.
I think it's time for an upset in a sense. They start very much as underdogs, but you know, if you look at it, there's always been not many in the last few years. Cardiff played Portsmouth, Cardiff didn't do it.
Yeah, I know, but it's got to happen sometime, and hopefully this will be it. You know, Emerson's always said, you know, he's living his dream at the moment, and he's achieved his dream by getting to Wembley. This win would just be the icing on the cake.
It's a rugby league town, really, Wigan, isn't it? Do you think that, gradually have they won over more converts?
I think so. If you look at things on Facebook, there's a lot of banter between rugby and football, but football seems to be getting larger crowds now at the DW. So it's always going to be a rugby town, but football is going up.
It's great to reflect on this. Do you think a lot about your contribution to aiding his career from such a young age, a lot or not?
Not really. It's what he's done with himself. I just guided initially, gave him the opportunity to train with Luton, which is where he started, and he's still got a big affinity to what he's done since. He's done with his own efforts, ability, and particularly attitude.
Well, let's explore that, because we hear about, you know, young players who, you know, earning thousands of pounds a week in the Premier League at a very young age. They have a lot of fame. They drive the fast cars, and some, not many, but some, you know, there are temptations and they go downhill. And again, he'd been so grounded to kind of be aware of that, or would that be fair to say? And it's all about character, really?
It's about character. A lot of football success is about character. Yes. Emmerson is of that sort of person that doesn't get carried away with the fast life. He's got his feet on the ground, knows what he wants. He's got family now, 3 youngsters. He's quite happy.
But in a sense, you know, junior football coaches all across both Hearts and Bucks who do it almost week in, week out, for the love of it, no pay, really. There's some frustrations with it, you know, persuading kids to get out of bed when they get to the teenage years, to turn up on time for training, etc., etc. But this is a story of great hope, and in as much as they might not be aware of it, are affecting the character and the attitude of some of these boys, regardless of whether they're going to the professional game.
They do. They have a lot of influence, sometimes not so good. But you know, the kids that are good will always come through, generally speaking. A lot of it is right place at the right time, the right colour eyes, but generally speaking, you know, if you've got it, you'll get spotted eventually.
But he had a good work ethic then as well.
Very good work ethic, yes. Yes, 100% record at training.
So if you had to sort of pick a winner in the cup final and give a score, what would it be?
Wigan 2-1.
Fantastic.
Optimistic.
Steve Greenhalf, then, who has been talking to us about the Wigan player Emmerson Boyce. Steve coached him at Aylesbury United from 1991 onwards until he joined Luton Town. Then, of course, he was sold to Crystal Palace before joining Wigan in 2006. Let's have a quick word with Steve's godson, and that's Kieran Pedder, because you know Emmerson. What's he like? I'm told you can beat him at FIFA.
He's nice, and I beat him at crossbar challenge as well, so I won 20 quid off him, which was quite cool.
But it must be nice to tell your mates that you've got a Premiership footballer as a friend.
Yeah, well, some of them don't believe me, but then I show them pictures and stuff, and then they believe me, and then it's pretty cool.
And so, what do you think will happen today at Wembley?
Well, I think we'll obviously struggle, but hopefully if we play well, keep it strong at the back, we could get a result.
The big thing is nerves, though, isn't it? When you get to Wembley, they tell us that the occasion can become a bit overawing. There's going to be a lot of noise, a lot of atmosphere. Do you think that'll worry Emmerson and worry his Wigan teammates?
Yeah, I think obviously it'll be an overwhelming experience for the whole team, because only one of them has been to Wembley before the semi-final, and he's out of the final now, so it'll be a good experience for them, no matter the result, win or lose.
So your godfather said 2-1 to Wigan. Come on then.
1-0 Wigan.
A candy-colored clown they call the Sandman tiptoes to my room every night just to sprinkle stardust